Hello everybody, welcome to this episode of TurboShed, and in this one we are going to turn an awful lot of meters of CDS tube into a roll cage for the shed. Yes, we're going to use 44.5mm, which is 1.75" tube. The reason for doing that is that I've got a JD squared pipe bender and I've already got the formers in that size, so it makes sense to use that. So we're going to do a bolting cage because it's a road car, and the other thing is that we can always weld the bolting cage in later if we want to, but we're not that interested in competition. So I've got a bunch of the brackets and saddles here to be able to do the bolt-on joints. We've got those sorted. I've got foot plates, 6 foot plates, so we've got 2 for the rear wheel arches, 2 for the main hoop and 2 for the front, and 6 backing plates to go underneath the floor and the wheel arches for those, and all the tube. So we're going to do a drift cup spec cage because that'll get us going to start with. I'm not going to put door bars in at the moment. We'll use bolting door bars later because door bars in road cars are an utter pain in the butt, but we'd like to twin with the car, so we will do them as a bolting option. So really first thing we've got to do is pull the seats out, pull the battery out so they're out of the way, and then I can get some of the sound deadening off the floor where the plates are going to go, and then we'll start looking and seeing where this tube's going to go, and take a deep breath and do some pipe bending. One last job before we do anything, and that's the Haltech that's hidden in here, because we're going to be doing welding and tacking with the car, which is why I've taken the battery out, because batteries tend to explode if you weld near them. It's always a good idea with Haltech, they're sensitive. Unplug it. There we are, because the last thing I want to do is to fry a 1500 quid ECU. Well, we've got the seats out, I've got the sound deadening out from the floor, so we can see where we're going to put things. These are the foot plates, and there's just enough room to fit those on the floor there, and the floor's pretty flat, so that's good, that'll work. And the main hoop has got to go over here in one piece. According to the rules, 4 bends maximum, although you can use 5 if you want. I don't know who wrote the rules, but they sort of contradict themselves. The BDC and the drift cup rules, so I'm just going to make a cage that I think's right. So we'll bolt it in the floor there, and I think as far as distance goes is I'm going to run the main hoop vertical and just back from the B-pillar. And the reason I want to run it just back from the B-pillar is that we have 2 seatbelt anchor bolts here, and if I have the tube running down this area here, I'll be able to make a bracket that comes off both of those as well, which will add a bit of support, and obviously, you know, everything you tie in together makes it a bit stronger. So I think that's it, that's our line straight down from there. So the rear plate's going to sit just behind the B-pillar at the bottom, because the B-pillars on this car slope backwards, and I think that'll do it. So we'll mark those up, and then I need to do some measuring, and we need to have a go at bending a hoop and see where this is going to go. There's some interesting angles on here, so it could be tricky. Well, here's my sketch. I think we're okay here. So I've got these legs are going to go slightly outwards on the rear in order to follow the form round, And what you do is, this is our centre line. If I start this top bend 41 centimetres from the centre line and put a 67-degree bend on, that should get us down the first part of the B-pillar, and then 38 centimetres down from the end of that bend. If I do a bend which is 67, that's 23 plus 4, 27 degrees here at this point. That should bring the legs in at the bottom, and that should give us 132 there. So the easiest thing to do now is to start from the centre and do this side first, and then we can easily adjust things on this side if we need to, particularly this top distance, because we want that tight. So let's go mark some tube and get brave with the bender. Well, here we are in the upstairs of the workshop. We've got our JD squared plate bender here, which is set up. We've got the formers in. I've got everything set here. So we'll start off at 90 degrees. I need a 67-degree bend. So I will bend it to probably 70, because it'll spring back about 3 degrees usually. And that'll be 160 degrees on the dial there. So I think it's just time to do some bending, and let's see where this bend ends up, and then we can adjust the other one to suit if we need to make it a bit longer or a bit shorter in the top. So anyway, point of no return now. Well, we've got our first bend in here, and you can see those benders do a very nice job. There's no kinks or marks or anything there. And I know that from where this bend finishes here, on the marks I've got, I need 1200 millimeters outside to outside. So this was my original centre line. So if I take a mark from the outside of this bend, 60 centimeters in and parallel with the top bar, that gets me to here, which is our new centre line. And I figured we might be a little bit off, which is why I was using this bend as a reference. So actually that is our new centre line. So if I go off the old one, we actually ended up at 565 mil to the centre line, and I wanted that to be 60, so I was 35 mil short. So what I need to do is add 70 onto the other end, and that should mean that when it's bent we have 1200 millimeters outside to outside, which should be right. So I think I shall mark that up, and we'll see where we go. So that was my bend start. So my original start was at 41, which is that mark I've got on there. That's the old 41. But as I say, I know I was 35 short from that. So I need 35 and 35, which is 70. We'll put an S there, that's where my bend starts. And I put a second mark on at 54, which was 54, 13 centimeters further on. And that's where my bend finishes, there and there. That's my start, that's my end, and by my calculations that will get us what we need.
Shut up and sit down.
Well, there's our two top bends. I've got it in the car and it seems to fit just perfect, but God, it's a wrestle by yourself, especially because these ends here are still a bit too long, but it won't go in properly because I need to put the bends halfway up here for the B-pillar mid-bend, So I need to do those two first before I can put it in properly, and then I can cut it to length, and hopefully we're okay. That's the main loop done, which is the worst part of the whole roll cage. God, what a tube. I've forgotten how hard the work to put in. It's taken me all day to put 4 bends in a bit of pipe, but I think it's right. It's just slowly got to get everything sorted out and make sure it's right, because I didn't want to do it twice. But it all looks okay. Very nice bends. So the next thing to do now, we'll just try it in the car, make sure that fits finally, and if it does we can tack the bottom plates in. And that's the main loop done. We can start on the other bits. So let's try it in, fingers crossed. Here we are with it in the car, so you can see it doesn't get any tighter than that. So it's touching on both sides there, it's right up. I'll bend this leg out an inch so it's up against the sill like that side, and that's our bottom loop in. Door's shut good, it's nice and tight, and if we go to the front you can see that the seatbelt anchor points that I pointed out earlier, it'll sit just behind there. I can put a plate off those onto here then, and that'll anchor it up here. The plate's down the bottom, and we can put the clamps on here for the bars that go forward and run down to the front. I think that's it. I'm pretty pleased with that. Well, you can see we've got the main hoop laid in place now. I've got my marks and measured it back from the seatbelt anchors to get everything square. I've made this thick wall bracket, hopefully you can see that. That will bolt on there. I've got some washers behind it at the moment. I'll make some proper spaces, because this is indented. If you have the bracket touching the metalwork of the car, when you weld it all up, you can't get it out, so it needs spaces in there. You're a bit of a doofus if you bolt it all directly up and weld it up for a bolting cage, and then you find out your bolting cage won't come out. Done the same on this side, you can see that, and down to there. It all fits very nicely. We've got 3mm gap up here and the same here, so it's about as tight as you're going to get a cage, and we're up against here. So I think the next job is we've got a gap in the floor here, so I'll probably need to beat the floor up a bit from underneath to flatten out this section, and then we can drill holes and weld these in. Sorry, we can bolt those in. Same on this side, and once we've done that, I can tack the rear hoop into place. I think that's what we need to do, yeah. And then we can make the rear stays that go from here down to the rear wheel arches, because they need to be within 30 degrees horizontal and vertical. So we'll work out where the best place is to put those. I would have liked to have gone onto the rear suspension strut there, but it would be too shallow, so we're not allowed to do that, and we're not allowed to put a bend in them. So they're going to have to go here. But that's got a reinforcing plate in it anyway already, so it's already at least double thickness steel. So yeah, that should be okay. I don't see an issue with that. we've got the main hoop tacked in, that all looks okay. So now we need to make these ones that go to the rear wheel arches, and the spec says they should be 30 degrees, but it doesn't say whether that's from the vertical or horizontal. The rules. So anyway, so I'm going to do them at about 40, I think. So I've got the car jacked up at the moment, as you can see. So if I lay my fancy Japanese angle gauge that came from Tokyo Hands years ago when I lived there, we stick this on here, line the bubble up, there we are, and you can see that I've got the car at 5 degrees. So obviously it would be there if it was sat on the ground, so I need to add 5 degrees onto this angle. And if I go with a plate in this area here and up to that bend, that'll be in the right place. So if I stick my angle gauge on here and turn that round, that lines up at 34 degrees, and I add 5 on because the car's jacked up. That gives me 39 degrees, and that means whether the rules are vertical or horizontal, that fits. It also looks about right, which is always a good thing. So I think that's what'll go there. So this has got a curve on it, so I'll just flatten that out a bit using the flattening tool, the 2 and 3 pound one, and we can drill and put the plates on there, cut a bit of tube, and fish mouth it up for this end, and then we can get that tacked in as well. And then once it's all tacked up, we need to take it all out to make sure we can actually get it out, and then we can weld all that up. So let's give that a go. Some flattening. Here's our rear plates mounted in on both sides. So the reason I've bolted them in properly to be able to set the distance is so if the plates pulled down when tightened up, you got the distance correct, because if that distance wrong, I can't get the bolts in up here. So I've tightened all those in properly like they should be, and if we look at the underneath, you can probably see the plate under there with the bolts. Obviously the bolts are through that way, so if the tyres rub, it doesn't rub onto a stud end, which would be bad. Right, that's that done. We can measure it up and we can cut a bit of tube and start doing fish mouths and angles and stuff now. Here's the first one done. Fish mouthed up here, that's that sorted. And down here onto the plate there, that's a nice fit, it's just resting on that spanner. So I think that looks okay. All we've got to do now is, I'll check the angle, see what we've got. Yep, 34 degrees plus 5, 39, that'll do. Right, let's make another one of those and then we can tack those in. Here we are, that's the other side in as well. Just laid in, so they seem to fit really nicely. Both of those, we look down and they're both parallel. So I think it's time to get the welder and tack those up now. Well, there we are. I'm pretty happy with that. It's all tacked up, everything fits nicely. I think I'll be able to get it in and out the car. So the only thing left on here is that up here at the top I've got to weld on the bolt-on bracket for the bar that goes forward and down through the A-pillar. So I will tack those in place before I take this out and completely weld it. So that's it for the rear hoop. All the main parts are made for it. I need to put a diagonal in it at some point, but I'm not going to do that this time. So A-pillar bars now to run all the way down there and down to the floor. And now that dash dodger cages are banned, it's going to involve some dash chopping, I think. Bye bye vents, it's been nice knowing you. Well, having taken everything off and chopped and pulled, there's actually nothing important in this area of the dash, which is good. There was just some air vent pipes and the electric mirrors and stuff, which I'd like to keep, but they're on a separate harness, so I'll be able to move those switches. You never know, long term they might even be able to fit in the dash here, so that'd be okay. Anyway, we've got a good line here all the way from our plate down there, so our leg can come straight up to here until it touches the A-pillar, and then we'll run it up the A-pillar and across the roof to the bracket. So I think that's given us enough room to go at. We're all good. Well, it's time to do the bar that runs down here now. We've got the dash open, so tape measure, angle gauge. We'll do this bend first and then we'll sort out the other one afterwards. So yeah, another bit of tube, some more bending. Well, I think I've got this bar rested in place, and you can see it fits pretty nicely along the pillars down to the footwell there. If we look inside, climb in here. So I've just put the clamp on loose up here, and that's where that's going to fit. I've also fish mouthed the tube, and the reason for doing that is if somebody does want to weld this in the future, the tube's not too short, whereas if you cut it square it would be. So hopefully I've done somebody a favour. So it runs nicely along here, down the pillar, through the hole in the dash and down to the foot plate. So I think that side's okay now, so I'm going to leave that in place and I'm going to make a mirror image of it and do the other side. So here's our two front legs, the left and right. You can see that there is a compound bend in them. That was a bit tricky, but anyway, we've done that. So the left hand side just needs the ends cutting length. It's about an inch too long on each end. So in order to do that I need to I've already liberated the air vent from the dash on that side, so I need to cut the dash out same as this, and then we can fit that side in and get these legs tacked in. I've already done the base plate down there, you can see, and then we can cut this one to length and fish mouth the end of it up there and yeah, get these bars tacked in. Well, I think we're ready to tack these in now. So I've put the clamps on up there, and you can see it running down the driver's side down to there, to the foot plate. And if I turn around, here's the passenger side, goes up through the dash in the same place, and up to there. And they meet exactly on this triangle for the rear bar on both sides, which is the stiffest place for it to go. So I'll just push that bracket into place when I tack it. And you can see I've fish mouthed these, so again, if somebody does want to turn it into a welding cage in the future, you can, without having to make all the pipes again. So we'll get these tacked in and then we do a window bar across here, and that's all I'm going to do for this cage session. Right, welding time at last. This is our front windscreen bar, 44 inches long. I'll put a bend here and here, so it goes around the rear view mirror, because I want to keep the mirror. That's it, really simple. Two small bends about 5 degrees each, maybe 10, and then I think we're done with the bending. Clamp on each end to bolt it in and everything will be tacked. Here's the windscreen bar in position. We've got the clamps on both sides, the bolted joint, so we'll tack all that in, and that's it. We've done the bends, we've done all the tacking. We can take the whole cage out and weld everything that we can, and then put it all back in and hope it still fits. Here's our two front bars and the window bar. So I've got those out okay, so I can weld those up, seam weld everything. And the rear, because I'm here working by myself, I've tipped it over in the car, so I think I'll weld it all there and then stand it up and weld the rest, and do that in situ, because I just can't physically get it out by myself. It's a problem working on your own sometimes. But that's it. I think there's just a lot of welding to do now, and that's the hard work done. That's it, everything's welded. I've waited for it all to cool down, so it's time to bolt it in. So we'll bolt in the back arch first, and we'll start off with these ones on the seatbelt anchors, because they're the most difficult, and everything else will hopefully fit. So, the moment of truth, has it warped? So is that side. Right, bottom plates. So we'll put one of these plates on the underneath, so we sandwich the floor pan. So we'll do that on both sides and in both rear wheel arches. Yeah, get some bolts done. That's the back of the cage in. It's all bolted in, everything lined up, especially the seatbelt one, so that's good. So we've got our plates down there, our anchor point up there, and our anchors onto the rear wheel arch. And if I show you outside, if you look inside the wheel arch, you can see the plates here with the bolts going through. Obviously the bolts are with the threads inside the car, so they don't get caught on tyres and stuff. And if you look underneath, you can see the plates here. Again, the bolts going upwards, so we don't, if you catch it on anything, it doesn't damage the bolts. So I'm really pleased with that. That's as solid as you like. So let's put those bits in now and get that sorted out. It's all in, bolted up, everything looks nice. I can put the interior back in now, put the foot plates in, the seats, the battery, I think that's it, and then get out for a road test. Oh yeah, and the front of the dash that I had to take off. So we'll sort all those bits and pieces out. Yeah, pretty happy with that. Plug the ECU in. You might remember we disconnected it because we were welding on the car. It's that one. That's that one. That's that one. Right, put the battery in and let it down, and we're ready for a road test. Well everybody, that's our project roll cage finished, for now anyway. Next job is we'll make a couple of door bars at some point, so we can twin when we're drifting. But I'm pretty pleased with how that's gone in. It's not in the way anywhere, it doesn't restrict vision or anything else, and yeah, I think that's a pretty good job, except it's taken me 3 days to do a one-day job. But anyway, there we are. These things happen, but you know, it's tucked away nicely, it looks good in the dash and stuff, so only one thing to do now, which is sounds like an excuse for a test drive to me. See you next time. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, share, let people know what we're up to with TurboShed. You know, nobody supports us with all of this. We do all this off our own back, and we do all our editing and everything else. So we do what we can. Thank you for the comments, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.